There is some good news. Did you know that the share of people living at below the global poverty line of $3 has dropped a ton over the past couple decades?
Yes, sir.
I've heard this.
Yes, sir.
Now, that probably, maybe you've heard that and you've gone, yeah, cool. And then you start worrying about the price of eggs again because that makes sense. So to set up, I do think optimism is important. And it's so easy for us and everybody on the internet to just talk about how shitty everything is. But as a reminder, over the past, let's say 50 years, the amount of people living globally in extreme poverty, including in China, which has a dramatic transformation, has decreased dramatically. For people who are watching on YouTube, here's a little visual of watching countries. Dark red means an extremely high percentage of people are in extreme poverty. And as the timeline moves forward, Africa starts popping up because they start measuring it. But you can see that basically all of Asia just starts to drop off of this thing. And in fact, if you pull up a line chart and you go to the world here, and this is from Your World in Data, which is really, really excellent, you will see that the percentage of people around the world living in extreme poverty, 1990 was 43%. It is now at 10. So that's a big number, and it might not mean very much. But what does that specifically mean? It means that if you're in extreme poverty, you have $3 of purchasing power in your respective country. And when I heard that, up until like this week researching this, I was like, well, okay, well, $3. Obviously, you couldn't live off $3 a day in America, but $3 could get you a lot of stuff in Sudan or whatever. But that's not what it is. The metric that the World Bank uses is adjusted, so it's the same amount of purchasing power. So when you say someone is living in extreme poverty right now in South Sudan, it doesn't mean they have 3 United States dollars every day. They're living in the equivalent of having 3 United States dollars in America.
Right.
It is the same living condition. So that means most likely you're getting 1-2 meals a day, maybe. Housing, you probably are not able to afford. You're probably sharing something that is very temporary, no electricity, no piped water. There's dirt on the floors, no real sanitation, no ability to access healthcare of any kind. There's no real education opportunities, except maybe if something is available in your region.
Could I give some context to this too?
Yeah.
This is from this recent call I had with somebody who's been living in Sudan for 20 years. I think he helped shape my understanding of how people really interact with this poverty day to day. Most people in areas operate like self-sustaining operations to just eat. Like they have a garden or do local farming with their community, and that is the way they get food. They don't go to a market or travel or go somewhere else to purchase their food from them.
Right.
They have to make it for themselves or for their local communities.
And get like a
Why don't they just get the Haley Bieber smoothie?
I don't understand that. Your skin it glows.
I think it really clicked for me when you see a lot of articles about famine hitting areas that are war-torn, right? Yeah. It's not just because the supply chain that fills like the market or grocery store where people go and buy things in their city is compromised. For a lot of people, it's literally because they had to leave their home and they aren't able to garden and grow their food anymore.
Right.
Like
you have no backup. You have no savings. If there's a medical emergency, war, your home is ruined, you have nothing.
Yeah.
You have nothing.
I think you come into these with like our ideas of the way we live. Like if I need food, I go to the store or market or equivalent and I go buy it somewhere. A lot of people don't even have access to that layer of interacting with. Like it doesn't matter if they have the money or not. The place to go get the food doesn't exist to begin with.
Right.
And that was a really important illustration to me of, that's how these famines play out and develop. That's the level of poverty that people in areas of Sudan are dealing with when you read these headlines.
Yeah, I was shocked to understand this because I thought, could I live off of $3 a day in the United States? And the answer is you could probably live, right? You could get like a meal or two from get instant ramen and maybe sliced bread and peanut butter or something, maybe a drink, maybe a bus ride, but you need shelter from other people, which in most of America, it's like not consistent. You maybe have shelter some of the time, no healthcare, nothing, right?
Do they contextualize or do you know? One question I've always had is why that happens to be the threshold, especially given that it's purchasing power? Like,
so-
why isn't it 4 or 10?
Yeah, why-
Because none of those amounts would be a lot either, right?
I was reading about this today. So they adjust it over time to basically reflect how purchasing has changed. So it was $1 for a long time, which again is not really a US dollar. It's the purchasing power of in America. And then it became $1.90 something like a decade ago. And then 4 years ago it was upgraded to $3. So I was reading through the methodology. I don't remember the specifics right now, but essentially they do update it. So as of the last couple years, it's $3 a day is the equivalent. And so now that we've set up the fact that living in extreme poverty is incredibly brutal and sad, and it's something we desperately would not hope for anybody on earth, it is truly astounding to look at how many people have been pulled out of that. If you look at China in 1981, that is 44 years ago, 97% of China was in that state. That is over 1 billion people. A billion people. Now, 0, 2022. Now, I'm sure that,
shit.
yeah, now there might be some, it's estimated in America, it's like, less than 1%, but obviously, people homeless living on the street, they fall into this category, right? So presumably that's true in China as well, but it is pretty irrefutable that this type of trajectory has happened. If you look at India, 60% were living in extreme poverty, 1977. Right now it is 5%. And India is notable for being one of the most impoverished and sort of, horrific slums, horrific living conditions, just unbelievable poverty for people who've traveled there decades ago. Like my mom lived there for a while. Yeah.
These are also the 2 key countries in lowering the global stat because their populations are so large and they've generally made so much progress over the last few decades that they have helped lower the global average by the amount that it's
you're talking about 2 billion people, and just the scale of that is so unbelievably mind-boggling. And this has happened essentially in our lifetimes, that it's just as much as there are problems in the world, like, man, that's encouraging. Like, it's so good to hear that humanity has done this. Vietnam, similar thing. 30 years ago, 57% of people were living in extreme poverty. Now it is 1.6%. I have Vietnamese friends who've talked about the change. Africa is struggling. Africa has not made that big of a difference, but there are a couple outliers. Rwanda, 25 years ago, 82% of people are living in extreme poverty. It is now 38%. I also was reading articles about how in the last 15 years, something like that, 6% of people had electricity in Rwanda. Now 75% have electricity. So Rwanda, asterisks there. It's kind of a dictatorship, but there are these.
Well, I mean, that's what I want to say is the human condition is inherently some sort of struggle. Even in America, we went from people on the frontier dying to dysentery to, you move up the value chain of problems. In Rwanda, once you get past we're starving and don't have electricity, you move into we want political enfranchisement. We want, that. So I think some of the struggles we're seeing in the world are because we've gotten past the phase where these countries are in desperate poverty.
Right.
And now they are in okay, we have strong men, we have problems elsewhere. Yeah.
So in a way,
it is progress in a way.
Yes. And you look here, these are the four countries or 4 of the countries we talked about earlier today that are having protests. All of them. I mean, Indonesia and Nepal were 90% poverty, and these have all plummeted down to 5%. And so while yes, it's sad to hear about protests happening in these countries where political corruption
that led to the protests.
I was going to say, I don't even know if it's sad, right? Because it's also the symbol of
people being lifted up out of poverty and wanting a better life. And these protests are happening online from Gen Z because so much of the society was able to pull themselves up. And so I am appreciative of humanity for the unbelievable scale at which we've been able to improve people's lives. Obviously, lots more to do, but fuck, man, there's so much good happening as well. And leading into that is Poland, which